Hey there, my 5 faithful listeners, and anyone who randomly stumbled upon this episode. My name is Lydia, and this is the Lydia Hill Pod. It's probably not a good idea to start a podcast because your last name rhymed with pod, but I'm here anyways. From spontaneous trips to special guests to deep spiritual conversations and everything in between, expect inspiration, stories, and plenty of laughter. Grab a glass of milk, settle in, and let's dive into the episode. Welcome to the Lydia Hill Pod. This is the first time in a long time that we've spoken. And in that time, a lot of things have happened for you and for me. So, with all transparency, I just wanted to spend this episode giving you an update of the series of fortunate and unfortunate events that have happened in the last year. The last time we spoke, I was living in London. I was having a great time explaining the reasons why we can confidently trust the Bible. And whilst I was living my best life in England, I met a guy. And I hadn't told you about him yet, although we had already been dating by the last time that I posted an episode. And his name is Callum. Callum and I began dating a year and a half ago. We met at a church singing, and we both had a passion for God and His Word, and that developed into a friendship and then a passion for one another. Well, about that time, I ended my schooling in London. So I graduated with a master's in content creation from Regent University, London, which means my visa expired. So Kaylee and I decided that we were going to move back from England to our respective hometowns. And at that time, I had to make a lot of decisions. Do I try to apply and stay? I did not have the money to do that. So we both went back, and when I went back to Tennessee, that began the long-distance portion of my dating relationship. Moving back to Tennessee was great. I got to see all my friends and family I hadn't seen in over a year. And while I moved back, Kaylee and I had this grand adventure. I like to call it our state tour. We basically went and visited all of the people and groups that help support us when we moved to England. And so during that, we went to Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, lots of different places in Tennessee and Kentucky. We convinced Callum to come and visit, which wasn't hard. He wanted to come. We hadn't seen each other since September. So in November, he visited for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, Kaylee and I decided that we would tack on the end of our grand tour, the places furthest away. And that just happened to be when Callum came. So we took that poor boy to, I believe it was 10 states. We went all the way to Texas. And on our way, we stopped through Arkansas, Oklahoma. We went to New Mexico to surprise visit Callum's friend, Josh. And then we went back through Texas down to Florida. We went through Mississippi, Alabama. We made it through Louisiana as well. We got to Florida. We visited some of my family there. Then we went up through Alabama and went back to Tennessee, and then we went to Kentucky, and then he flew out from Nashville. With all of that being said, it was a whirlwind of a trip. He met all of my family, most of my close friends, and I don't know how he survived those 2 weeks, and then went straight back into work. I personally needed a long time to recover from that. We drove, I think, a total of 56 hours in the car in those 2 weeks. It was the most crazy thing we could have done. I knew if he could handle that, he could handle a life with me. Soon after we did that, I moved to Spring Hill, south of Nashville in Tennessee, and began working with a church there. While working there, a lot of things happened. I went to Nicaragua for a week to help out with a school there. And after coming back, Callum made his second appearance in Tennessee. He came while we were having the Friedharbin University lectureship. That is where I went to undergrad. And I was speaking at the lectureship. Later that same evening, he proposed at a house of some dear friends of mine. One funny part about this is he didn't bring the actual ring because it likely would have had to have been declared, and he didn't want to deal with customs and all of that kind of thing. So he brought another ring that is kind of like I get a bonus ring. It was very sweet and thoughtful. It has a lot of meaning. It's the style of some of the earliest engagement rings. It's a Roman style. So I really enjoyed that. And then immediately after the lectureship ended, we went to Costa Rica. We were there for a week. I come back for 2, maybe 3 days, and then I fly out to England. He had convinced me to go to England so I could go to a youth conference in Belgium with him, but he had other plans. He also wanted me to see his family and everyone right after we got engaged. All was well until I got on the plane to go to England. And I hadn't been my normal self the last few weeks before, but I just chalked that up to I'm getting older. Wow, I'm really weak. I can't believe I must be so out of shape. Like, I thought something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what. I get on the plane and I'm falling asleep the whole time. I feel really bad. I get to England and his mom picks me up from the airport, takes me to their house. The whole, first 2 days, I'm sick in bed. I have wet washcloths that he's going and soaking in the bathroom and then bringing back to me. They're cold. I put them on my forehead and on my neck, and in 5 minutes, they're really, really hot. And then we have to go make them cold again. I was drinking lots of water. I just couldn't get out of bed. I felt so ill. I've never been that sick in my life. I thought I got better after a few days of taking some Tylenol, and we had plans to, like I said, go to that youth conference in Belgium. So I act like I'm completely fine. We go meet some friends in London for dinner, and then we take our train to Belgium the next day. That was such a mistake. When we got to Belgium, I went straight to bed, and the whole conference, I just laid in bed drinking Powerades. The energy was just knocked out of me. My throat was swelling. I didn't know if I had some kind of foreign virus because I had been to Nicaragua and Costa Rica recently. I couldn't go to the doctor because, embarrassingly enough, I usually don't buy travel insurance for myself. Whenever I travel with a group or I'm in charge of a group, I get travel insurance for everyone. But when I'm going by myself, I'm just like, is it really worth the extra $20? It is. You should get it. I couldn't go to the doctor here, so I just waited. And then a few days later, I flew home. I thought I got a little better, but then it came back and got worse. I was still ill in bed. I went to a walk-in clinic. They tested me. I was negative for the flu, for strep, for just any random things that they could think of. And I was negative for mono. So then I went back to Spring Hill. I went to the ER because I was dying. I don't know how I drove myself to the ER, but I did it. And by God's grace, I made it there. It was midnight. And then they came back and they were like, good news, you don't have a foreign virus. Bad news, you have mono. And I said, hold up. I literally just tested negative for mono a few days ago. But apparently there's multiple tests and ways that they can find it. And one of them, if you test too early, it may not show up. And Not really sure how that works. Either way, I had mono, which is glandular fever in the UK. They call it something different. Well, I got some antibiotics and went home, laid in bed for a few days. I was drinking so much water. I was drinking like 8 bottles of water a day, and I still felt horrible. But I was scheduled to go speak at a ladies' day in Indiana. So I drove up to Kentucky, met Kaylee. We drove to Indiana. I am on my last limbs. I also lost my voice because my throat was so raw. Somehow, God blesses me with enough ability to speak through this event. They said that it wasn't contagious by anything other than sharing food, saliva, stuff like that. So I made sure to not do that with anyone. And I've been taking the antibiotics and everything, trying to get over it, trying to build resistance. But unfortunately, the doctor said that mono most strongly affects people when they're in their young adult era. So this was the worst time in my life to be able to get this. I was so sick. And this was a month or so after I'd gotten it. I go back to visit my parents on the way home, drop some stuff off at the house. I barely can get out of bed. My mom takes me to the ER, and at the ER they say, "Lydia, you're dehydrated." Now my first question is, how in the world is that possible? I've been drinking 8 bottles of water a day minimum. And they were like, water isn't the only thing that hydrates you. You need electrolytes. You need other things. So they pumped 2.5 bags of fluids in me and gave me a cocktail shot. Now, that is probably the first time that I felt decent in months. They told me that the expected recovery time was 3 to 4 months. It took me a good 3.5 months to get over mono. I don't know how people survive this. And I have no idea how I lived 24 years without knowing how severe mono could be. I guess I just never was around someone when they had it or had a really bad case. But I'm telling you guys, it's real. It's bad. It's real bad. During this time, I was obviously planning a wedding. We decided to get married in August. We wanted to maybe get married a little later, but we had to work around his family schedule, my family schedule, of the ones we wanted there, and because of school scheduling and other things, August was just the best time so that all the people we love could be there. With getting married to a foreign national comes visas. So that was when we also started doing tons of research on visa applications. Oh, I also left out the part that the reason why I paused the podcasting when I moved back was because Kaylee and I decided the cheapest way, which is true, to ship our belongings back over here was not to fly it with us, but to get a shipping container and sail it across the ocean, which took about 3 months to receive our belongings. And within that was also my podcast equipment. So that's why I stopped podcasting for a little bit. Then obviously I was traveling, I was moving, I got sick, then I got really busy, and I have no other excuses other than the fact that every time I felt good enough and had time to podcast, I was physically incapable of doing so. After spending a few months preparing for the wedding, beginning my new job, getting over being sick, that was when my dad started having his surgeries. He had one surgery in, I think his first one was February. He had hip replacement surgery, and they ended up doing both hips 3 to 4 months apart from each other so he could heal one side and then heal the other. He had been having a lot of back pain and trouble walking, and they finally figured out it was his hips. And we were so glad that that happened. But that meant that he was unable to go to work, unable to take care of my mom as well. She had been in remission for a while from her cancer, but it came back in the lungs and esophagus. So we were just dealing with a lot of family stuff. Well, then my grandmother has a shoulder replacement surgery, and after the surgery, her arm started swelling because of some problems with the lymph nodes. And so she was having to go to the doctor a lot. My dad was going to the doctor. My mom was going to the doctor. I was trying my best to be at home and available to help. And I was planning a wedding and figuring out moving and visas and everything. I'm not complaining about all of the work because everything that happened, I'm glad that I was able to be there and we were able to accomplish everything we wanted to. But I'm just saying it was a lot, and podcasting was not my priority. When we got closer to the wedding, we started planning my move to England because legally he could not stay in America until he gets some form of visa. Legally, I really can't stay here more than 6 months at a time, but we knew we'll start out in England and go from there. Whenever we started the visa process for the US, we were talking to lots of people who had been applying for visas or already received their marriage visa in the US, and we realized it's a very long process. So at that point, I kind of knew I'm not going to be visiting or living near my family for a long time. It could be a year or more before we're able to go back to the US. And that was something that we both had to make decisions about after we got married, which the wedding was wonderful. I'll probably make an episode about wedding planning and marriage and everything later. It was just a great time because all of my loved ones and family and friends got to come together, be in one place. And since I have so many different friends from so many walks of life, it was awesome to get to see them meet each other and just to be surrounded by people from my childhood, college, and even my time in London, and getting his family to meet my family. I love that day. After the wedding, we had a honeymoon in Canada, Calgary. If you ever have the chance to go there, you should. It is beautiful. But before we got married, right before, about 2 weeks before, a lot of things started happening. Callum's car got hit by, we think maybe the garbage man. My car started falling apart. Something had happened when my car got worked on where they left some of the hubcaps off and it messed up my alignment. I had to get a whole new thing fixed in my car. We were like, we don't need to be spending this money, especially on a vehicle which I'm about to move and not use for so long, but we had to do it so that I could drive. This is a very small, unfortunate event, but I feel the need to mention it. I was painting and doing DIY wedding decor, and my sweet housemate, Emily, she just let me use her whole downstairs space to make these things. Like, one of the things was a cloth that we painted a welcome sign on. Well, we both did not consider the detrimental effects of taping the sheet to the wall without putting something like cardboard behind it. And the next day when I go to take the sheet down once it's dried, both my and Callum's names are painted onto her wall. I felt so bad. But that was just kind of like what was happening the 2 weeks before the wedding. And you would think, oh, that's the worst thing. Wrong. 2 weeks before, I was at a retreat with our church family, and my mom had been saying weird things, acting differently, and my dad finally took her to the ER when it got very serious. I mean, this was only within a week of noticing changes. And the cancer that she had spread to her brain, and they found a tumor just small enough to operate on, except because of her other disorders dealing with blood clots, surgery is not an option. And so she was having trouble remembering like who I was, what year it was, her birthday, things like that. And I was getting married in 2 weeks. Of course, I wanted my mom to be herself and to be at the wedding, but I had to drop everything I went and stayed at the hospital for a few days. They decided to do radiation for 5 consecutive days leading up to, this was the week of the wedding. So she ended up receiving radiation, and that shrunk the tumor enough that she was able to think clearly and be more herself, although obviously she was tired and in pain. And so it was a lot for my mom to go through the wedding, but thankfully she was able to be there, and we were all able to celebrate as ourselves. That was the most confusing time because the happiest day of my life was combined with the feelings that I had been having for the previous 2 weeks of some of the saddest moments of my life. Now, she's still receiving treatment and they're still doing scans, and this was only 2 months ago, so we're seeing, is it working? What else can we do? And the doctors are trying their best, but that was just another unfortunate event that happened right alongside the most fortunate of events. Once they found the tumor, I realized, there's lots of things that my mom was supposed to be doing for the wedding and she hadn't been doing because she had forgotten or wasn't able to think clearly. So I just took all of those tasks, but my bridesmaids and friends and family were so kind, and I'm so blessed to have them because they all just stepped in and said, what can I do? Or not even what can I do? They went ahead and did it and then told me that they did it because they didn't want me to have to take on all of that stress leading up to the wedding. The end of September, I submitted Callum's visa application in the US and then flew out to London, where I got picked up from the airport and I moved with 2 suitcases, and now I'm living in Shepshed, England, which is near Loughborough in the Midlands. This life update is a lot, and I want you guys to know that I intend to continue this podcast. Even though I have a new last name, I promise to continue to make the same content. It's been a privilege just to see the ways that you guys have reached out to me, that you've cared about me and supported me in both the fortunate and unfortunate times. God has truly carried me through the last year, and I can see that He's making paths and continuing to provide for me for now and for the future. I can't wait to see you next week on the Lydia Hill Pod. Bye, guys. As we wrap up this episode of the Lydia Hill Pod, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for you spending time with me. This really challenges my belief that I only have 5 consistent listeners. If you have any thoughts, topics, or questions you'd like me to explore further on future episodes, please reach out on one of my socials. I hope that our conversations have brought you inspiration and joy. If you have friends or family who might be interested in our conversations, don't hesitate to share the podcast with them.